Welcome to this edition of Inside America's Boardrooms. I'm TK Kerstetter, your host for the show, and we're here at the New York Stock Exchange, actually overlooking the trading floor, and we have a very good show for you today. Today, we're going to be talking about a new book that's been published for boards. It's called A Board Guide, Governance in the Digital Age, and it is a guide for the modern corporate director, published by Wiley. And my guests today are the two authors of this book. To my immediate right is Dottie Schindlinger, who's the Vice President of Thought Leadership for Diligent. And to her right is Brian Stafford, who's the CEO and President of Diligent. Welcome, both of you.
Thanks for having us here.
So Dottie, I'm going to start with you. First of all, tell us a little bit about why you guys wanted to write the book.
Sure, happy to. So, we've been thinking about these issues for a long time. How is technology having an impact in the boardroom? And we were interested to write a book not so much about the technology itself, but about the boardroom practices and how things are changing in response to the speed of information and how much that speed is increasing. Right? So there's a lot of change happening. There's a lot of digital disruption. Things are moving faster. When your business model can be upended in a morning because of a tweet, really that becomes a much harder thing for boards to be able to stay on top of and stay at the same pace. So we wanted to write a book that looked at some of these changes and speak to directors and hear directly from them how they are coping, how they are trying to keep up, and really try to write a book that shared some of the best practices or really just some practices that are working. There's plenty of books that talk about things that go wrong. We wanted to write a book that talked about some of the things that are going right. So in our interviews with directors, those are some of the things that we learned.
Well, it's a great read, and rather than go into the more into the mechanics, I want to get into the part about what you found interesting about the process. So I want to ask you both the same question, but Brian, I want to start with you. So you interviewed such an eclectic group of people and board members. So what was particularly interesting about, and what did you learn from that experience of what they told you?
Well, as you mentioned, TK, we did get the opportunity to meet with a lot of different board members, interview them, hear about their experiences. I think the thing that I found most interesting was the board members who we interviewed who took a very proactive approach to adding new skills or expertise to their board. And it was a more active, constantly active conversation around how do we actually add the right skills and expertise to our board, either through, some people highlighted through adding new board members with a different set of skills, but other people highlighted very practical things, said, well, if my board was resistant to adding new people, how did I find the right people to bring in as experts to come and speak to the board? And really, if I couldn't force new board members coming on, how could I still make sure that our board was prepared with that level of expertise?
So Dottie, same question to you about your experience, because you probably talked to the most board members.
I think the thing that I found the most surprising was that in every interview that we conducted, we were hearing over and over again how hungry these directors are for better information, and that they're not just waiting to get the information from inside the company, but they're really going out and doing their own digging. They're looking for information that's going to be helpful to them, both about their industry as well as peer institutions that are maybe around the same size, but also just more broadly about technology itself. They're digging into things like AI and algorithms and deep learning techniques. They want to know as much as they can about technologies that could be disruptive so they can be ready. And I think that was reassuring to hear. In the interviews we spoke with the directors, I don't think I expected to get that result, and it was very interesting to hear their stories.
So it's encouraging that Diligent always seems to be ahead of the curve. Diligent does great work with the next gen board leaders. Here's an example of taking a look at how the transformation is changing the boardroom. All that I think is really solid. But Brian, when you were done with the book and you knew that people were going to be reading it, what did you hope would be the results of being able to sort of influence, board members as a result of the book?
We took a very practical kind of approach to things, and we hope that this is not meant to be didactic academic research from kind of sitting in an ivory tower. This is going and meeting with a lot of different board members and helping to collect their thoughts and their ideas and tips and best practices. So what I hope people take from it is very, very practical set of best practices and tips that come from many, many, many of their board member peers. And then we also break down those tips and best practices based upon the type of board that you serve on. Not all boards are at the same stage in their evolution, the company's evolution, and we come up with a series of very practical archetypes for different boards and practical suggestions across each of those types.
So Dottie, you again have a chance to interact with a lot of board members. Do you find in general that boards are up to speed like they should be with transformation? Because, you know, I guess I don't always see, you know, that's the case, and I don't always see boards reforming their skill set, even though the best boards, you know, and best practices we do. But sort of what's your experience as you go around, you know, at all these different boards?
I think it really varies. I mean, there certainly are outlier boards that are doing exceptionally well, have a lot of technology experts on the board and are, you know, just really kind of outperforming their peers. But then there are a lot of boards that I think feel a lot of pressure to know more and to be more up to speed and to be more knowledgeable on technology issues and are really struggling and are looking for practical guidance. And I think to Brian's point, that's one of the reasons we were excited to write this book, is that we wanted it to stay practical. You know, it's really meant to be able to be read on a flight from New York to LA and just give you some practical guidance and some tips that you can try. And we really hope to get that feedback from directors as they read this and tell us, you know, what did they find useful? There's a lot of good stories packed into the book. So I think they're going to find interesting things that will help them.
So Brian, Diligent is on the cutting edge for the board software. You're always trying to add that next element to, you know, what data or information a director needs prior to their board meeting or during their board meeting. So how has the book translated into what you're looking at in the way of making sure that the portal and the resources that are in the portal are meeting the digital age?
Yeah, so let's go back to it. Governance in the digital age. And what does the digital age mean? It means that new things are coming at companies and boards unbelievably quickly. And the bar or the expectation of companies to respond quickly is so much higher. So one of the reasons that we did the research was to come up with the ideas from board members on what would make them and their companies better prepared. So when you don't know whether that cyber attack is going to come, that activist investor is going to come, some kind of Me Too movement or regulation, how do we make sure that we can pull together data from a bunch of broader sources and make sure that that data is eventually available to board members so they can be more informed, so they can move quickly, et cetera. All, in many cases, curated by the company itself, but make sure that it can be something that isn't just updated 4 or 5 times a year whenever you have a board meeting, but actually is updated in real time.
So Dottie, where can people interested get a copy of the book?
You can find it on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. You can also order it directly from the publisher at wiley.com. Basically, really everywhere you find booksellers, you can get a copy of the book, and it's available right now in hardcover and ebook, and soon it will be available as an audiobook, and it's also going to be translated into a few different languages, so keep an eye out for that. Well,
congratulations to you too. I'm sure that this is not a painless exercise to write a book, unless I'm wrong about that, especially with your schedules, but I think it's a great read, and congratulations, and thank you for taking the time to join me here on the show. I appreciate it.
Thanks, take care.
Thank you so much.
And that will conclude this edition of Inside America's Boardrooms. We hope you enjoyed the show. We'll be back again next week when we take another look at a critical topic that'll help you be a better board member or committee member. So we'll see you then.